The last 365 days of my life have been absolutely insane.
Like, I cannot believe I was able to fit everything that I did into a single year. This job has been exhausting, yet exciting. It's the hardest I've worked, and it's the most I've enjoyed working. My first full day at KSR began with my last full day at my old job. As soon as I got off work, I floored it to the 606 to see my first ever high school football game in the mountains. And with Kentucky playing at noon, that meant the first of several nights sleeping in KS office.
So I'm walking up to the office. I'm like, where the hell is the light? I look up. Boom. Daryl Isaacs. Scared the shit out of me.
Where there are no controls over the heating and AC, I was either freezing or I was on fire. I woke up to get video of the 9 a.m. pregame show, shot a new show with Drew Franklin that will be back for its second season. The first few weeks just flew by, with Stoops presser on Monday, offense on Tuesday, defense on Wednesday, Stoops on Thursday, high school football on Friday, game on Saturday, and podcast on Sunday. Before I knew it, we were like halfway through the season. We got to our first SEC home games of 2022. One went bad, the other one much better. During the bye week, I got to meet and talk with Jeff Shepard at the Blue-White game in Pikeville, like one of my childhood heroes. I got to see my first Ryan Lemon pep talk in person at the remote at Country Boy before my first SEC road trip. And that would be to a familiar sight. I covered Tennessee football for Scout in 2014, so I understood that this UT fan base reeked of depravity. Like, they were hungry for a championship. They had the spooky Rocky Top with Dolly Parton, the flyover, the fireworks. I mean, I looked at Adam Luckett before the game, and I was like, we don't have a chance. This game's over. And it was. The following week, it was a trip to Missouri with a completely different outcome. Kentucky was staring 8-4 in the face until Ray Davis ran all over us in the embarrassing loss to Vandy at home. Later that week, things would get worse. Kentucky basketball would lose to Michigan State in double overtime in the Champions Classic. They would lose to Gonzaga. Kentucky football would lose a close one to Georgia, and then they would beat U of L fairly easily. And after covering a few more home games for basketball, it was time to pack my suitcase that I would trust United with, to board a Sunday afternoon flight to Atlanta and get on the 8-hour flight to London, where I may have slept 3 hours. The first day was just like a fog or blur. I remember watching some of the U.S. World Cup game, interviewing some Kentucky players, but by the time we got to our hotel later that night, it felt like I'd been awake for like 3 straight days. My girlfriend Jackie was able to make the trip with me to London, and we were both up and at it early the next morning to make our way to the O2 to meet up with Mr. and Mrs. Tyler Thompson at London KS Bar. Here's what was so memorable about that. Before the game, we got to meet with members of the Big Blue Nation from all over the world. I cannot tell you how cool it was to hear someone with a British accent talking Wildcat basketball.
Willie Cauley-Stein and all that, so Alex Poythress and all your players like that, so just kind of escalated from there. And
or to share memories of watching the team we love with Kentucky fans from Spain.
I'm a great fan of Kentucky, the number one team in the world. You know?
Or hearing Go Big Blue chants in an arena in a foreign country. We got one more day in England where we got to sightsee. Unfortunately for my girlfriend, that meant going to North London to see the stadium of my favorite Premier League team, Tottenham. So I had to make it up to her with some non-sports fun the rest of the day. Traded those tracks for train tracks the next day, and it was wheels up to America, where United was unable to get me reunited with my suitcase. After returning from England without a lot of my clothes and gear that I would have to go months without, I packed a new suitcase and boarded a flight for New York City to meet up with Drew Franklin to cover Kentucky versus UCLA in Madison Square Garden. A long night at Dempsey's, and a day full of running into Cat fans around Manhattan preceded the game.
A lot of Mariah Carey going on in this city.
That Kentucky would, of course, lose. The next day was jam-packed with all kinds of activities. The first started in the Bronx. It was there that we would be joined by John Calipari in Orlando, Antigua, and checking out future North Carolina Tar Heel, Ian Jackson. Of course, we didn't know he was going to North Carolina at the time, and I guess Coach Cal in Orlando didn't either. Someone next to Drew during this game, though, was talking like mad shit the whole time from the opposing team. He was just like a fan of the opposing team, and he's running his mouth the whole time. And Drew was doing everything he could to not associate himself with that guy. Get some reading material.
Heck yeah.
Can you tell the story behind that?
Yeah. It's a guide for African American males.
How much you pay for that?
20 American dollars. Shop local, got a good book. See no problem with it, no regrets.
Next stop was Brooklyn to celebrate Christmas, Zimbabwe style.
If you're like into like African cuisine in Zimbabwe, where I'm from, we have a little bit of like a biltong. This is not your typical like.
I haven't had that before. What did you call it?
It's called biltong. It's like a more natural, more like the reasons why I walked into Jack Jackson's doors was because of you.
Are you trying to make me cry?
And then like you wrote about it, and like your stories. I was in Atlanta at the time, and like your stories, I was like.
It wasn't long after that Jack Pilgrim and I made the trip west to Columbia, Missouri, my second trip there in as many months. This one, not as fun. For Kentucky basketball, things were going south fast. But that all changed when Drew and I made our way south to check out a Buc-ee's and the Cats upsetting Tennessee in Knoxville. The last road trip of the regular season would include a stop in Atlanta to see where Rob Dillingham was playing high school ball. Another disappointment, and it would be a long ride home thinking about how Kentucky would likely miss out on the NCAA tournament. But the Cats would turn things around and win their next 4 games before losing to Vandy twice in 2 weeks, the second of which was at my first ever SEC tournament as a fan or member of the media. Here's what sucked. Jackie was planning on meeting me there, going to the games on Saturday, and if we were fortunate enough, Sunday. But by the time she arrived in Nashville on Friday night, the Cats had already been eliminated. And that night, we stayed at this neat little Nashville-themed hotel about 15 minutes from downtown. It was affordable, the staff was friendly, and of our 2 nights staying there, only one included a shooting in the room directly below us. That is 100% a true story. It actually happened on the first night, and then we were like, what are the chances that it would happen again? So we just stayed there for the second night anyway. At any rate, you could say that my first SEC tournament experience did not go the way that I thought it would. So Sunday, on my way home, I stopped by John Calipari's house to see who Kentucky would play in the big dance. After getting what we considered to be a favorable draw, Jack and I got on the road to Greensboro, North Carolina, leaving at like 6 p.m. and driving all the way through to the fancy media hotel. I would actually stay at a Days Inn down the road. But we saw the Cats advance to the round of 32 before losing to Kansas State. It was another agonizingly long drive home after the loss. On the way home, I gave some thought as to who or what is to blame for Kentucky losing. It was the basketball. While baseball kept us busy for a little bit, I was introduced to what off-season content looked like. In April, thanks to Nick Roush, I got to see how racehorses are made. I'll spare you the details. In May, Roush, Luckett, and myself made the drive to Kansas City for the NFL draft, and another disappointing night for Wildcat fans. In June, we watched the Batcats win their regional. My schedule in mid-July looked like this. First, a trip to my new favorite city, Toronto, for 5 days to watch the new-look Kentucky basketball team dominate in Global Jam. If you've never been to Toronto, I cannot recommend it enough. There is one thing, however, I do not recommend, and that's driving to and from Niagara Falls. The 90-minute drive took us about 5 hours.
But yeah, I'm real close to turning my back on Toronto. Real close.
Wheels up to Louisville, where Jack and I watched the gold medal game from the plane. And after arriving on Sunday night, I was back on the road Monday afternoon to get to Nashville for SEC Media Days. For 4 days, the 5 of us made KS House our home. And although it was fun and I had a great time and all that, by the time it was Thursday, I was anxious to get back home. Fall camp, media days, fan days, new podcast launching kept me busy through the month of August. And before I knew it, my first year at KSR was in the books. I am fortunate to work with so many talented people that make this job fun and rewarding. Seriously, I work with some of the hardest working, most passionate people in this industry. I really appreciate them welcoming me in and making my job easy by killing it with their content. And I know I am already lucky to get to do this for a living.
But if I could be a little greedy, it would be nice if the football team or the basketball team could do something special and make year 2 at Kentucky Sports Radio even more memorable. So here's to a 10-win football season and a 35-win basketball season. Thanks for watching, and go Cats.